Hey, Soul Stories fam! We're starting a new love journey. Tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and join our family. Now stay with us. The story begins. St. Augustine Church was drenched in honey-gold light, pouring through its towering stained glass windows. Luminous ribbons washed over the marble floor, as if the entire morning sky had bowed down to witness the most important moment of a person's life. Eva Caldwell stood in the bride's room, both hands clutching a bouquet of white peonies. Her wedding dress hugged her slender waist, the long veil nearly brushing the floor as it rippled with each trembling breath. She looked at herself in the mirror, soft brown eyes, a gentle face tinged with nerves, and forced a smile. Today, she would finally have a family, something she had longed for ever since she was a child, waiting by the window for her mother to return from a late-night shift. A soft knock sounded. Not a laugh, not congratulations, just silence. Noah's father, a man who normally spoke too loudly for any room, stepped inside with a pale face and a crooked tie. Eva waited for him to say something, a reassurance, a joke, a reason, but he only handed her a folded piece of paper. "I can't do this." "Noah!" The room spun. The door frame seemed to tighten around her chest. She heard her mother calling her name, the rustle of dresses, footsteps running through the hallway, but everything felt distant, muffled, as if underwater. Noah had run. On their wedding day. On the day Eva believed happiness had finally chosen her. Instead of collapsing, Eva took a slow, steady breath. The dress felt unbearably heavy, like 100 tears that hadn't yet fallen. She adjusted her veil, touched the necklace her mother had saved for years to buy, and pushed the door open. If fate had chosen to humiliate her, she would face it, alone. When the grand doors of the church swung open, every sound seemed to die. 300 guests turned their heads. Eva stood there, delicate, proud, her heart bruised but still beating. She knew there was no groom waiting at the end of the aisle, but Eva still walked. Step by step, slow and steady as whispers swelled around her. Slow motion! Her white veil floated with each step, spinning slightly in the golden columns of light cast through the stained glass. The hurried click of cameras. Someone is quietly sobbing, the pounding of her own heartbeat so loud it almost stunned her. And then, she felt a gaze, not pity, not curiosity, but something deeper, heavier, hotter. Eva lifted her eyes. At the far end of the church, beside an ancient stone column, stood a man alone, tall, commanding, leaning lightly against the pillar, as if nothing in the world could move him. Lucas Sterling, CEO of Sterling Innovations, 38 years old. Noah's uncle, but not part of the official family line. The illegitimate son of the Sterling dynasty never spoke of, yet still feared. A black suit framed his powerful build. Light from the stained glass glinted across his hair, dark with hints of steel. In his gray eyes, dear God, and those storm gray eyes locked onto her as if she were the only thing existing in that vast, sacred space. Lucas didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't attempt to hide the storm rolling through his gaze. No pity, no regret, only desire, dangerous, quiet, unashamed. Eva felt her skin heat, even though an entire aisle separated them. A warning, or a summons, or a promise she wasn't sure. When she reached the empty altar, where Noah was supposed to stand, the silence was absolute. She heard her mother's shaky breath behind her, heard the whispers of women saying, "Poor thing," heard someone murmur, "How embarrassing." Eva lifted her chin. A small gesture, but every muscle in her neck, every nerve in her body tightened like a drawn bowstring. She would not fall, not in front of them, not in front of life. At the back of the church, Lucas straightened. His gaze shifted. No longer a vague desire, but a decision, as if a switch had been flipped, and nothing could turn it off again. Eva spoke softly, her voice trembling but steady. "The ceremony will not proceed. I'm sorry for the inconvenience." Another wave of whispers rose, and she turned. Her white veil spiraled around her like breaking clouds. And in that exact moment, bathed in golden light, Lucas Sterling whispered, too quietly for anyone but himself, "She's not the woman for Noah." his hand curled into a fist, his eyes never leaving Eva for even a heartbeat. She's mine. Eva walked out of the church with a shattered heart. Lucas remained in the shadow of the stone column, his own heart awakening, for the first time in 10 years. And neither of them knew that the most humiliating moment of Eva's life was also the moment destiny aligned their paths. Between golden light and an abandoned altar, another story had begun, a story Eva never saw coming. But Lucas, he had been waiting for it for a very long time. The noon sunlight poured down the stone steps of St. Augustine Church, so blinding that Eva had to squint as she pushed through the heavy wooden doors. The noise behind her, the rustle of guests whispering, someone sobbing in pity, was cut off the moment the doors shut with a sharp, merciless click. No more soft colors from stained glass. No more white veil drifting like clouds. Only sunlight, wind, and a vast emptiness stretched before her. Eva stood on the top step, her small shoulders trembling, and for the first time since she'd read that scribbled note, "I can't do this," her eyes, once proud to the point of cruelty toward herself, finally shattered. Tears spilled as if the sun had melted the ice she had fought to hold together inside the chapel. Each drop slid down her cheek, brushed her lips, and fell onto the bouquet clenched in her hands. She had been strong. She had stood tall. She had faced 300 staring eyes without bowing her head. But the moment she stepped out of that church filled with sighs and pity, there was no one left to witness. No one she needed to stay strong for. And so Eva cried. Not the loud, broken kind. This was the sort of tears that made her whole body shrink, as if she wished she could simply disappear into the blistering heat of the pavement. The church door inside shifted faintly. Lucas Sterling stood in the cool shadows of the hallway, one hand braced on a stone column, the other gripping a black leather glove so tightly the veins on his hand stood out. He had not intended to step out. He had no right to remain. He had no reason to follow her except God knew what he was trying to deny, a pull without a name, dragging him toward that woman. Then he saw her. The bride no longer stood like a warrior in the aisle. She was a 25-year-old woman whose heart had just been crushed by the man she was ready to give her future to. And that image, the trembling veil, the fragile shoulders, the sunlight reflecting on her tears, hit him like a punch. Lucas's chest tightened, a violent sensation that made no sense, no logic, and yet was impossible to resist. He turned his head for a second, as if to cage a storm inside himself. Don't let emotion in. Don't do something that would give the family another weapon against him. But when he looked back, Eva was still there, alone, beautiful, and broken in a way that silenced every rational part of him. Lucas stepped half a pace toward the door, then stopped. A vein pulsed at his temple. The hand holding the glove clenched so hard the leather creased, his jaw locked like granite. Not out of pity, not out of a desire to save anyone, but because of something deeper, something primal, something he had no right to even entertain. He had to leave, immediately, before this rare flicker of weakness made him do something reckless. Outside, hurried footsteps approached. Noah's mother rushed toward Eva, her face drained of color, eyes swollen. She wrapped Eva in shaking arms. "Oh God, you poor girl. Don't blame Noah. He's still young." He panicked. "Lord, how did everything turn out like this?" Frozen under the embrace of her almost mother-in-law, Eva did not cry anymore. Her tears were gone, but the pain remained, dense, heavy, lodged in her throat like a stone. From inside the church, Lucas watched through the narrow door opening. Two women, one shattered, one frantic, and between them lay the vulnerability Eva had fought to hide all morning. The sight forced Lucas to close his eyes for a second, overwhelmed by a surge of emotion. No one saw him. No one knew he was still there. And no one would ever believe that the man the world claimed had no space for feelings, Lucas Sterling himself, felt something twist sharply in his chest. He turned away, walked swiftly into the shadowed corridor. Light from the door stretched across his back, casting a long silhouette on the cold stone floor. Strong, imposing, and utterly alone. After regaining some composure, Eva refused everyone's offer to take her home. She straightened her posture, as if gathering the remnants of her dignity scattered at her feet. "I'll go by myself," she murmured. Then she turned, a bride in the midday sun, with no groom, no vows, just pain glowing like embers beneath ashes. She descended the stone steps, her legs trembling but still carrying her toward the taxi waiting a few yards away. The summer wind caught her veil, spinning it like a stolen memory. Eva did not look back. At the same time, on the side of the church, Lucas pushed open a smaller door and stepped out. Sunlight hit his face, sharp features carved like marble. Tall, powerful, so intense a single glance could make anyone move aside. He pulled out his car key but didn't open the door yet. For a brief moment, he stood like a living statue. His gray eyes were fixed on the street where Eva was walking away. A long, deep look, as if branding her image into his mind. Not to mourn it, to keep it. Wind swept the hem of his vest, framing him like a scene torn from a film. A proud, dangerous man hiding a storm in his gaze. A storm he had no right to feel. Then he turned, got into his car, left without a word. Two people walking in opposite directions. She toward a wound she had no idea how to heal. He toward a destiny he didn't yet know he had touched. But fate, in its own quiet cruelty, had already drawn a line between them. A straight line, sharp, irrevocable. And Lucas Sterling, though he never looked back, carried with him a gaze that would haunt him for years. The moment Eva Caldwell lifted her chin amid the ruins, became his, forever. 3 years after that empty altar day, Manhattan slipped into autumn with a soft, golden hue, like a layer of light brushed on by God's own hand. Maple leaves fell along Tribeca's avenues, spinning in the wind like old stories finally released. Eva Caldwell walked briskly along the sidewalk, her heels tapping against the stone in a rhythm of confidence and resolve. The kind born from 3 years of living without needing anyone to save her. A caramel-colored suit framed her lean figure. Her brown hair was pinned neatly at the back of her head. The dark handbag on her shoulder reflected the organized life of a fully grown woman. For 3 years, Eva had learned not to lean on anyone. She rebuilt herself from the ground up, nights spent poring over financial reports, early mornings studying for her CFA exams while the city was still wrapped in mist. Now she was an independent investment analyst whose schedule even Manhattan's boutique funds had to compete for. Her sharpness in the boardroom made CEOs pay attention, yet she lived a quiet life. No dating, no emotional openings, no one allowed near the wounds she had learned to bury. And still, sometimes Eva felt something strange, like someone standing behind her, keeping her from falling. Not a coincidence, not luck, but an invisible hand intervening at uncanny moments. A deal unexpectedly tipped in her favor. An anonymous investor swooping in to rescue a project. A notoriously cold CFO suddenly signing with unusual ease. She didn't know who it was, but her instincts were never wrong. Someone had been watching over her from the shadows. Today she had come to a Tribeca cafe to meet a potential client. Warm golden light fell from glass pendant lamps onto walnut tables. This was one of New York's rare pockets of calm, a place where Eva could breathe without feeling observed. She opened the door, stepped inside, and her heart stopped. At the table near the window sat Noah Sterling, with a pregnant woman, heavily pregnant. The air around Eva solidified. The man who had run from their wedding day now sat comfortably, one hand on his chair, mouth slightly curled as though life had never demanded a price for what he'd done. Noah saw her first, his smile twisted into mockery. "Oh," he drawled, "look who it is. My family's runaway bride." Eva straightened, her shoulders lifting by instinct, the reaction of someone who had been wounded but refused to step back again. "Excuse me," she said coolly, "I have an appointment." Noah scanned her from head to toe, smirking. "Didn't think you'd bounce back this well after 3 years. I figured you'd still be doing small jobs, living off charity." Eva tightened her grip on her bag strap, feeling a tiny crack inside her chest but showing none of it. The pregnant woman glanced up and whispered, "Who is she, Noah?" He didn't miss the chance. "An old mistake of mine." The words hit Eva square in the chest, but instead of lowering her head, she shifted slightly so the pain wouldn't shine through her eyes. Noah, she said softly but firmly, what do you want? I want you to sign this. He dropped a stack of papers on the table. An unofficial dissolution and a statement that you have no legal ties to the Sterling family. Eva stared at him. Why now? Noah sighed, acting as though he were the victim. My child can't have its inheritance affected because of that embarrassing failure between us. My family still talks about you like a stain. The pregnant woman scoffed. I don't want our baby connected to any of his messy past. Messy? Eva repeated, her voice low. Noah shrugged as if it were all reasonable. You know how it is, Eva. Everyone knows you were abandoned. My family still sees it as a lesson. Another fracture ran through her chest, but this time, it didn't make her shrink. It made her stand taller. She spoke, each word soft yet sharp, like silk honed to a blade. You left me, on our wedding day, in front of 300 people, and now you want me to apologize for your cowardice? Noah flushed red, grasping for control. I deserved better, and now I've found it. He placed his hand on the woman's stomach, a petty, cruel display of power. Eva felt her heart twist, but her body stayed upright, steady as stone. The cinematic moment stretched. The background blurred. Golden light fell across her face, illuminating eyes that held steady even though pain flickered beneath. Noah saw that flicker, and he smiled. He liked it. Just sign, he said, lowering his voice to something darker. Don't make yourself a joke again. That was when the cafe door swung open. A gust of autumn wind swept in, carrying yellow leaves from the sidewalk. Time seemed to slow. A tall figure stepped inside, his presence casting a shadow across half the room. Broad shoulders, a controlled, powerful silence follows each step. Eva turned. Lucas Sterling had finally stepped out of the darkness of 3 long years. Eva recognized him instantly. Lucas Sterling? Not because he was impossible to miss, though that was painfully true, but because of those gray eyes. Eyes that, 3 years ago, in the most humiliating moment of her life, had lingered on her as if he were the only person in that church who saw her pain not from above, but as an equal. She'd only seen him for a few seconds that day. Yet his gaze, cold, deep, unfathomable, had sliced into her memory like a silent blade. She had never forgotten it. And now, 3 years later, that same man was standing right in front of her in the tiny cafe he should have had no reason to walk into. Lucas wore a charcoal gray suit, the kind of fabric that caught the afternoon light like molten steel. A scent of cedar wood and amber followed him inside. Warm, dark, powerful enough to make Eva's chest tighten for reasons she did not want to analyze. He didn't look at Noah. He didn't look at the pregnant girl. He didn't look at anyone else. He looked only at her, with eyes no longer icy like 3 years before, but deeper, heavier, as though carrying 1,000 unsaid things. Eva felt her throat go dry, not from fear, but from the realization that his appearance was not an accident. Noah shot up from his seat, face drained of blood. Uncle Lucas? What are you doing here? Lucas didn't answer. He didn't acknowledge him at all. His gaze remained fixed solely on Eva. But his voice, God, his voice, was a low rumble of granite grinding against granite, each word carved out of power and restraint. If you stay here for 1 more second, you're fired. No one in the cafe knew what he was talking about, but everyone understood the tone of a man accustomed to obedience. Eva watched Noah shrink. In that split second, something strange hit her. Noah, once the son of his family's universe, looked like a child facing a headmaster. And Lucas, the man the Sterlings had always treated as a shadow best forgotten, was the real force in the room. Noah stammered, I just wanted... Lucas cut him off without sparing him a glance. 15 seconds. The pregnant girl lurched to her feet, panic twisting her features. Noah, let's go! Now! Noah scrambled to gather his papers, nearly dropping his wallet. He gave Eva one last look, restless and guilty. I'll send the documents to your lawyer. You? Just sign them, okay? Eva didn't answer. She stood perfectly still like a beam of light in the storm, her brown eyes unshaken. The door slammed behind Noah. Silence fell. Lucas still hadn't looked away. From the moment he entered, it was as if every breath he drew was tied to her. Finally he spoke, his voice so low it felt meant for her alone. You shouldn't have to endure that, not again. Eva inhaled, steadying her breath. You know me. He tilted his head, a slow, intentional movement. 3 years ago, St. Augustine Church. A pause. I remember you. Those 3 words weren't loud. They weren't dramatic, but Eva felt something inside her freeze, as though she had been pulled into a spotlight only he could turn on. She swallowed. I, recognized you too. Lucas stepped forward, not so close as to invade her space, but close enough that she felt his breath skim the edge of her neck, raising goosebumps. Good, he murmured. Eva shifted, reclaiming a sliver of distance. What are you doing here, Lucas? He looked at her as if that question was the very permission he needed. I came because of him. A beat. And because of you. Eva frowned, not in irritation, but the reflex of someone who had learned to guard every open door. Please don't talk as if I'm someone you have to protect. Lucas didn't smile, but the corner of his mouth curved in a way that made her pulse misfire. Not an obligation. His eyes darkened, glowing with a metallic heat. A choice! Eva instinctively stepped back half a pace. His hand lifted, never touching her, stopping just above her wrist, holding the air between them with precision. He didn't touch her, yet she felt him on her skin. You're shaking, he said quietly. I'm not, Eva replied, though her voice was a shade thinner than usual. Lucas angled his head, gaze sharp and warm enough to fracture the armor she had worn for 3 years. Not because of him. His voice dipped lower. Because I'm close. Eva's heart clenched, painfully but alive. Lucas, she whispered, I don't need protection. He didn't argue. He didn't contradict. He simply looked at her for a long, unbroken moment, as if imprinting her into his memory a second time. Then he spoke, his voice a vow hammered in steel. No, but I need to protect you. Eva opened her mouth to refute him, but Lucas continued, this time with a gaze so intent she felt as if she were standing before a man who wasn't just accustomed to commanding a room, but to keeping every promise he uttered. These 3 years, he said, I've stayed outside your life long enough. A breeze drifted through the front door, spinning a few fallen leaves at their feet. People in the cafe turned to look, but they blurred into a backdrop. Only he and she existed in the frame. Eva, Lucas said for the first time, saying her name, and the sound of it sent a tremor down her spine she wasn't prepared for. I'm here. I'm not leaving again. In that moment, Eva felt as if someone had flipped a page beneath her feet, the beginning of a new chapter she wasn't sure she was ready for, but even less sure she could walk away from, because for the first time in 3 years, with Lucas looking at her like that, she no longer felt alone. Bad news always arrives when a person believes they're at their strongest. 3 days after the run-in at Tribeca, Eva Caldwell awoke to the insistent vibration of her phone. The dim morning light slipped through her curtains, soft, pale gold, seemingly harmless, but the knot of unease in her chest tightened as if someone were squeezing it. She picked up her phone. Dozens of messages, dozens of emails, notifications from news sites. A headline slammed into her vision. Investment analyst Eva Caldwell accused of stalking ex for 3 years. Cheating, affair before the wedding? She read slowly, each word slicing across her skin. The article was from the exact kind of tabloid she'd always avoided, yet it spread faster than anything she had ever seen. They wrote that she had pretended to be abandoned to gain sympathy, that she had cheated, forcing Noah Sterling to flee the altar, that she had reappeared 3 years later to extort the Sterling family. All lies, blatant lies, lies only Noah could be cruel enough to invent. Eva's heart pounded, breath tightening, her fingers trembling as she scrolled further. A source close to the Sterling family says Noah and his fiancée are very happy and only wish to put their toxic past behind them. Toxic past? Were they calling her toxic? She dropped the phone onto the bed as if it had burned her. The soft thud echoed inside her skull like thunder. Within an hour, 2 major clients had emailed, "We'd like to pause the contract. We must protect the fund's image." By the 3rd email, Eva's vision blurred. Her bright, orderly apartment suddenly felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in. She backed toward the corner of the room, inhaling sharply, yet still unable to get enough air. A tapping at the window. Voices below. A cluster of reporters had gathered outside her building. Microphones lifted. Cameras pointed straight at her windows from the street. Questions slammed upward like nails. Ava, did you cheat? Are you chasing Noah for his money? Do you have anything to say about the baby? A ridiculous question. Yet it carved right into the shame she had buried for 3 years. Eva backed away, step by step, until her spine hit the wall. Her breath fractured. Her body felt weightless, as if she were close to collapsing. She thought she had moved on, thought she was strong enough, thought she had built a new life on the ashes. But it only took one kick from Noah for everything to crumble, as if none of it had ever existed. She slid down to the floor, knees pulled to her chest, soft pajama fabric rumpled beneath her. Her hand trembled as she opened her laptop to check the last email. A major venture fund wrote, "We are canceling the contract due to reputational risk." A broken sob escaped her throat. Dry, painful. Eva pressed her hand over her mouth, but the tears still came. Slow, heavy, hurting as if they fell from bone rather than from eyes. 3 years. 3 years of fighting to stand, and in a matter of hours, everything was torn apart. Don't cry, don't be weak, don't let them see you. She told herself that, but her shoulders shook, her chest clenched painfully. She folded forward, forehead against her knees. That was when she let go, let everything unravel. Time blurred, minutes, maybe a lifetime. Then the doorbell rang. Once, twice, a third time, followed by a low, deep voice cutting through the door like a hand settling on her shoulder. Ava, it's me, Lucas Sterling. Ava didn't stand right away. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, though wet streaks remained. She pulled herself up using the edge of the table, unlocked the door in a haze of fear and exhaustion. The door opened, and the world seemed to change color. Lucas Sterling stood in front of her. Just a tall man in a charcoal wool coat, traces of cold street air still clinging to his shoulders. In one hand, he held a paper bag from the most expensive bakery in Manhattan. In the other, 2 steaming coffees. Those storm-gray eyes fixed on her, and Eva nearly buckled from the way he looked at her. Not pity, not curiosity, not anger, but worry so deep it felt like someone had touched the thing he guarded most fiercely. Lucas stepped inside with one sure stride, nudging the door shut with his shoulder before she could say a word. He placed the bag of pastries on the table as gently as if a loud sound might break her. Then he turned back to her, and suddenly she felt small, 15 years old, standing before a man who could see straight through every crack she tried to hide. Lucas rolled up his sleeves, a simple motion, yet the air seemed to thicken. He knelt down to her level. His long, warm fingers touched her wrist, not gripping, just touching, like he needed to confirm she was still here. His voice was low, rough, like night wind brushing against steel. Eva, just her name, but inside it was restraint, fury at her being hurt, and the unmistakable implication that he knew everything. He looked directly into her tear-bright eyes and spoke slowly, like a vow. Let me handle it. The room fell so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. Eva wanted to resist, wanted to demand why, wanted to tell him she could fix this herself. But under that gaze, steady, strong, impossibly gentle, every defense inside her began to melt. For the first time in 3 years, Eva felt like there was somewhere she could rest. And in that exact moment, though neither of them knew it yet, the gears of fate shifted direction. The cafe air steamed between them, but Eva couldn't smell the aroma, couldn't taste the bitterness. The only thing she was aware of was Lucas, towering in the small kitchen, his shadow spilling across the counter like a warning, like a promise. She sat there, hands still trembling, eyes swollen from hours of crying. He leaned against the counter, sleeves rolled up, muscles taut beneath his skin, his face so cold it looked as though touching him might burn. The apartment was silent, too silent, as if all of Manhattan had been drained of sound. Have you eaten? Lucas asked, voice low, controlled. Eva shook her head. He slid a croissant toward her, a small gesture, but so gentle it made her eyes sting again. 1 second later, his voice dropped. so low it felt like a breath brushing against her skin. "Eva, look at me." She lifted her gaze. Lucas's eyes held no hesitation, no pity, no question, only a decision. She hadn't even breathed when he continued, "Marry me." The words crashed into the kitchen like thunder. Eva went still. Her chest tightened. The air grew thick as syrup. Why?" she managed, barely audible. Lucas stepped toward the table. One step, then another, until his knees touched the edge and Eva's world shrank to the radius of cedar wood and amber that surrounded him. "Because you're being destroyed," he said softly, "and I won't allow it." "But I shut down the scandal," he cut her off. "I use my name, my power, my media channels to kill every lie Noah spreads." Eva gripped her coffee cup. "You don't have to." "I do." He didn't raise his voice, yet it cut sharper than steel and sent a shiver through her. Lucas leaned forward, face level with hers, his gray eyes capturing every flicker within her. Fear, pain, pride. "You think I'm doing this out of obligation?" His lips curved, not quite a smile, more like a predator restraining instinct. "Ava," he said slowly, "I've watched you for 3 years. Every step you took to stand again. Every time you unlock an article about the wedding scandal. Every night you worked until 3 in the morning just to prove no one needed to save you." She froze. He had been watching her from afar, silently, like a man who wanted something he forced himself not to touch. "You don't understand." "I do." His hand hovered near the edge of the table, close enough that warmth radiated toward her like electricity. "You're the strongest person I've ever met, but even the strongest needs someone to stand between them and the storm." Eva swallowed hard. "And in return, what do you get?" Silence. Lucas leaned closer, his shadow swallowing her like the room itself was shrinking. "You." One word, yet it sent a tremor down her spine. His gaze locked onto hers, not asking, not begging, possessing. A masculine certainty that wasn't forceful, just undeniable. "In return," he continued, "I get the right to protect you without asking permission." Eva shook her head, tears balancing on her lashes. "You sound insane." "Maybe." He straightened, but his voice dropped to a tone that slid along her bones. "But I have never wanted anything as clearly as I want you." The room spun faintly. Lucas Sterling, the coldest, most powerful man she had ever known, the one who bowed to no one, was proposing marriage. A marriage to save her and to have her. She set her cup down, searching for air. "I need time." "I know." He reached into his coat, pulled out a card and placed it in front of her. An address, Westchester, the Sterling estate. 8 p.m. tonight. His voice was low, certain. "Come, or you lose this chance." "A chance to be protected?" Lucas shook his head. "A chance to walk into my life." Silence thickened. Her breath quivered. He saw it. Lucas stepped back toward the door, hand on the handle. But before leaving, he turned, his gray eyes framed by the golden light from the window, the apartment behind him blurring into a slow-motion film. "Ava," he said, voice like an unfinished vow, "I didn't come here to flirt with you. I came to pull you out of the hell Noah built." No sound existed except her heartbeat. "And if you walk through my gates tonight," he paused, his gaze softened, deep enough to steal her breath, "I won't let you leave me ever again." The door closed quietly behind him. Eva stood frozen for a long time, fingers clenched so tight around the card that her knuckles turned white. The click of that door echoed inside her chest like a heartbeat-changing rhythm. Tonight, 8 p.m., her world was about to shift. The road leading to the Sterling estate stretched beneath the deep violet sunset of Westchester. Ancient oaks stood on either side, their long shadows pointing the way. And Eva Caldwell, dressed in a navy gown that hugged her curves, stood before the tall iron gate, her heart beating faster than the passing cars. She had thought about this all day, dialed Lucas's number, then erased it, changed outfits 3 times. wondered whether she was walking toward salvation or a fire that would swallow her whole. But when the intercom chimed, "You may enter, Ava," every doubt melted like thawing snow. The door opened and he stood there. Lucas Sterling, in a white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to his forearms, warm gold light washing over his sun-touched skin. His storm gray eyes swept over her slowly, deeply, as if taking in every detail. She froze, breath trapped in her chest. He stepped closer, very close. "You're so beautiful." He tilted his head, searching for the right word. "You make this entire house glow." Ava flushed. "Are you trying to throw me off?" Lucas gave the faintest smile, the kind only a man who had hidden 1,000 feelings for 3 years could give. "No effort required." The dining room shimmered with candlelight. Red wine glowed in their glasses. Soft jazz threaded through the air like breath. Lucas poured wine for her, his fingers brushing hers for a fraction of a second. Just a touch, yet it sent heat rushing through her chest. Throughout dinner, conversation flowed so naturally that it startled her. They talked about books, favorite cities, and private failures neither of them had ever admitted to anyone. And between every sentence, every glance, there was a current, invisible but crackling like a live wire pulling them together. Candlelight reflected in Lucas's eyes, turning the gray into something tender and dangerous at once. Eva lifted her glass. "I still don't understand. Why me?" Lucas leaned back, golden light sliding across the sharp line of his nose, giving his face even more depth. "I don't want a deal." His voice dropped, warm and low. "I want you." Her grip tightened around the stem of her glass. Lucas held her gaze, unblinking, unwavering. "And I've wanted you for 3 years, since the moment you walked down that aisle with pride in your eyes despite the pain, and didn't cry." Ava couldn't move. "For 3 years," he continued, "I never stopped watching over you. Even when you thought you were standing alone, Ava. You weren't." The words fell like a lit match. She felt herself melting, every layer of armor softening. Lucas stood. "Come with me." He led her up the dark wood staircase, the banister polished smooth by time. Each step seemed to raise her heartbeat. Lucas stopped at the double doors at the end of the hall. He opened them. Soft light spilled from the spacious room, with a large window overlooking the night garden. A charcoal gray bedspread, candlelight flickering on shelves. The scent of cedar wood thickened the air. "This is my room," Lucas said. His voice was so deep she felt it in her bones. He turned to her, eyes sweeping through her soul. "If you marry me," he took one step, "you'll live here." Another step. "On this bed." He stood close enough that she felt his warmth. "With me?" Eva's breath stuttered, her fingers unconsciously gripping her dress. Lucas tilted her chin gently, as though afraid of hurting her. "Ava," he whispered, his breath brushing her lips. "Tell me, do you want me?" Her heart slammed against her ribs. She closed her eyes for 1 second, opened them. "Yes." A whisper, but strong as a storm. The restraint in Lucas's eyes vanished. He pulled her in, his arms sliding around her waist, not rushed, but certain, as though he had imagined this moment for 3 years and feared it would disappear if he blinked. His lips met hers, first soft, as if testing, then deeper, hotter, fiercer, until she had to grip his shoulders to keep from melting into him completely. He cupped her face, kissing her like a man who knew his own power, but tried to soften it to match her heartbeat. But when Ava kissed him back, just barely, he nearly lost control. Lucas drew her against his chest, his mouth moving from her lips to her jaw, down her neck. Each kiss slow, deliberate, hungry, as though he were memorizing her body with permanent devotion. Eva trembled beneath every touch, not out of fear, but from the realization that a man had kept every desire silent for 3 years, and was finally letting it burn. He rested his forehead against hers. "I dreamed of this," Lucas breathed. "So much I thought I'd go insane." "No." She slipped her fingers into his hair and pulled him down. Her kiss this time sure, unhesitating. Control shattered. Lucas lifted her into his arms and carried her toward the bed. Candlelight flickered wildly against the walls like beating hearts. The night filled with cedar wood, wine, skin, breath. No rush, no harshness. Just the slow eruption of two souls who had been restrained too long. That night wasn't just passion, it was confession. Spoken with lips, breath, and the way he held her like he'd waited a lifetime. Hours later, Eva lay in Lucas's arms, still breathless. He pulled her closer, whispering into her hair, "I'm not letting you go. Not this time. Not ever." And Eva understood. She had stepped into a kind of love with no return, no escape. No one wants to run. They had both already burned. Morning sunlight spilled through the bedroom windows of the Sterling estate, warm and golden, like a blessing that had arrived 3 years too late. Eva opened her eyes first, finding herself pressed against Lucas's chest, his breathing steady and deep. As if last night had been merely a beginning, not the climax. His hand rested at her waist, natural, possessive, as though his body had known before his heart ever admitted it. She shifted slightly. Lucas's eyes opened. In the soft gray of morning, those eyes looked gentler, but no less intense. "Good morning, my almost wife," he murmured, voice still rough from the night. Eva flushed. "We haven't—" Lucas kissed her lightly, ending the sentence. "We will," he said. "Today." The road to the courthouse, where fate paused for them to catch up. 2 hours later, the black Sterling car pulled up in front of the Westchester County Courthouse. No reporters, no relatives, no one at all. Just them. Just two people standing at the crossroads of their lives, choosing each other. Eva wore the champagne dress Lucas had left on the chair that morning, simple yet elegant, hugging her curves as though tailored for her alone. Her hair fell in loose waves over her shoulders, a quiet beauty that seemed to slow the very wind around her. When she stepped out of the car, Lucas almost forgot to breathe. He wore a charcoal suit, his tie loose, but his gaze made Eva feel as though she were entering a vow before hearing it spoken. "You okay?" he asked. She gave a small smile. "I'm not sure." "I am." Lucas extended his hand, palm open. "Come with me." Eva placed her hand in his, and every fear softened. The courthouse was quiet, their footsteps echoing on old stone floors. The clerk looked at them as though they were just another couple, unaware she was signing off on the most powerful man on the East Coast and the woman who would rewrite his legacy. The paperwork was done so quickly that Eva almost felt she'd signed a business contract, not a life. But when the words, "You may kiss the bride," were spoken, the world stopped. Lucas didn't kiss her right away. He placed both hands on her face, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. So tender it made her heart ache. Then he lowered his head. The kiss was longer, deeper, more than any ceremony required. He didn't care that the clerk was watching. He didn't care that the environment was cold and sterile. He kissed her as he had finally reached something he'd been chasing for 3 years. When they parted, Eva was breathless. Lucas looked at her with the expression of a man who had just signed the greatest commitment of his life and had never regretted anything less. "It's official," he said. "You're my wife." Eva swallowed, voice barely steady. "And you? Is my husband?" The way she said husband made his lips curl slowly, like a promise about to turn into a storm. That night at the estate, when husband and wife became real. Shadows stretched across the Sterling mansion when they returned. Eva stood in the living room, hands trembling slightly. Everything felt too fast, too real. Lucas stood a few steps away, yet his gaze was close enough to touch her. "Eva," she looked up. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "Yes." "Honesty, not weakness. But I don't regret it." His eyes softened, truly softened, for the first time she had ever seen. Lucas walked toward her, slow, certain. Every step, a pull she couldn't resist. When he reached her, he tilted her chin, making her look directly at him. "Eva, from today," his voice was low, heated, licking down her spine like flame. "You carry my name." He lowered his head, brushing her lips with a kiss so brief yet so deep her knees weakened. "From today," he continued, voice a molten whisper, "I have the right to protect you, stand beside you, keep you, touch you." Eva's breath faltered. Then four words, soft, lethal, irrevocable, cut through her. You are mine. Her chest tightened, grief and desire tangling into something she couldn't name. Lucas. He placed a finger on her lips. Gentle but absolute. You're mine, he repeated, softer, deeper. And you have been for a long time. She didn't argue. Couldn't. Didn't want to. She simply stood there, heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs, staring at the man she had never dared to imagine wanting her. Lucas bent down, pressing his lips to her neck. A slow, deliberate kiss. A mark. A claim. My wife, he murmured, voice weighted like a vow. Tonight you sleep in my arms. You don't leave. The room glowed with low light. The air thickened around them. And Eva knew, deep in her bones, that tonight her world would change again. In a way she could never undo. 1 week after their secret wedding, New York stepped into gala season. The night sky wore a luxurious shade of deep violet, as if the city itself was dressing up for the biggest event of the year. The Met Gala private preview, reserved for the elite, major sponsors, and the East Coast's top CEOs. And tonight, for the very first time, Lucas Sterling's wife would appear before the public. In the dressing room of the estate, Eva stood before the mirror, her hands trembling slightly. The emerald velvet gown hugged her curves like a river of midnight. Its deep, backless cut and bare shoulders shimmered with a soft, metallic sheen that caught every movement. Her hair was tied low, with a few loose strands framing her face and adding a delicate femininity. She had never worn anything that made her feel this powerful. Lucas appeared in the doorway. His gaze paused at her waist, then her shoulders, then her lips. Slow, consuming, making Eva momentarily forget to breathe. Come here, he said. She turned. Lucas stepped toward her, one hand lifting her chin, the other settling on her waist. Possessive, warm, unapologetically claiming. Do you know what you look like tonight? His voice dropped, low and molten. Like the woman the whole world is about to bow to. Eva flushed, but the trembling inside her softened. With him beside her, she was no longer small. She was luminous. When the Sterling limousine stopped in front of the MET, hundreds of flashbulbs burst like falling stars. Paparazzi crowded along both sides of the red carpet, calling, shouting, cameras snapping. The door opened. Lucas stepped out first, tall, commanding, wrapped in a perfectly tailored black suit. He extended his hand into the car. Eva, she placed her small hand in his, her first step onto the red carpet, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Flash after flash exploded around her. Who is that? She's stunning. Oh my God, who's with Lucas Sterling? Eva could feel the warmth of Lucas behind her, even without turning. He placed his hand on her back, right at the soft curve of her waist, gentle but authoritative. A single gesture that made every camera swing toward them. Not a push, not guidance. A declaration. This is my wife, my equal, my world. The massive hall glittered with lavish gowns, expensive suits, and elegant laughter. But as Eva and Lucas stepped inside, the noise dipped a beat. Eyes turned toward them. Tech CEOs, oil magnates, A-list actresses, artists, designers. Everyone pivoted to follow her movement. Eva drew a breath, trying to stay calm. But Lucas leaned down, murmuring against her ear. You don't have to worry, I'm here. His hand remained at her back, steadying, shielding, defying every stare directed at her. People who knew Lucas approached. Lucas, congratulations. Who is this? He didn't hesitate. My wife. Eva heard soft intakes of breath, murmurs of surprise, and whispered compliments about her beauty. But what warmed her heart was the way Lucas kept her close, as if letting go would allow the world to pull her away. Under the massive crystal chandelier, where the lights spilled down like a shower of stars, the jazz band shifted into a slow melody. Conversation quieted. Attention drifted toward them like a tide. Lucas turned to Eva, his eye, storm gray, deep, burning beneath the polished exterior. Eva, he said, voice lower than the music. Do you know why I brought you here tonight? She shook her head softly. Lucas tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, an intimate gesture bold enough to make onlookers whisper. To make the world stop talking about Noah Sterling, he stepped closer, and start talking about you, about Eva Sterling. Her heart leapt. Then in front of hundreds of New York's elite, Lucas lifted her face with both hands and kissed her. Not a polite greeting, not a soft brush of lips, a deep, lingering, worshipful kiss, and completely public. The music stopped. Camera flashes roared like fireworks. A few women gasped. The entire room fell silent, so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. Lucas pulled back slightly, but kept his hands on her face. His mouth hovered near hers. His voice was so low only she could hear it, yet strong enough to stay with her forever. I want the world to know who you are. Who am I? She whispered, trembling. Lucas leaned in, forehead against hers. My wife. The next morning, every major newspaper splashed the same set of photos. Lucas Sterling kisses his secret wife at MET Gala. Identity shocks media. The million-dollar kiss that erased every rumor about Eva Caldwell. Noah Sterling exposed. Sterling Innovations CEO declares, she's my wife. The old scandal vanished like dust in the wind. Noah was pushed out of the spotlight. Eva became the city's brightest focal point. And beneath the MET kiss photo, Vogue wrote, if anyone made New York's heart stop last night, it was Mrs. Sterling. Eva read it with trembling fingers. Lucas appeared behind her, hands settling on her waist, kissing her neck softly. See? He murmured, voice warm. The world knows you're mine. Eva leaned back into him, her heart softening. And you're mine too, she whispered. The whole city seemed to shine. Eva understood. Her life had turned down a path she could never return from, a path she didn't want to leave. The Sterling estate was quiet on an early winter afternoon. Sunlight fell across the wooden floors like silk, soft, warm, and slow, as if the day itself were afraid to disturb the peace. Eva was organizing her new office, a small room beside the library, soaked in natural light, where Lucas had told her, make it your own. She reached into a drawer to arrange some files when her fingers brushed against an old envelope tucked beneath the bottom folder. On the corner was the logo of an investment fund, the very one that had saved her from bankruptcy 3 years ago, back when she first started freelancing. Curious, Eva opened it. A clean, decisive signature stared back at her. One line that made her breath stutter. Approved by LS. Lucas Sterling. Eva's hand trembled. She found another envelope beside it, as if someone had placed them in order. A copy of a contract, one she thought had been her first major breakthrough. In the corner were the initials, recommended from LS. She swallowed and opened another. A thank you letter from a CEO who had once hired her for consulting work. At the bottom, handwritten in ink, Sterling Innovations, guaranteed integrity. Eva's pulse kicked. She tore open more envelopes. Every file was a piece of her past, a deal she had once thought was luck, a speaking opportunity at a financial summit, an article praising her work. Behind all of them was him, silent, unseen, never asked for credit, never expecting gratitude. Eva pressed a hand to her mouth to hold back the sob rising in her throat. For 3 years, someone had stood behind her, quietly anchoring her world whenever it threatened to collapse. Someone who made her believe there was still a place for a woman who had been left at the altar. Not out of pity, but out of love. Her body trembled as though the ground beneath her had shifted. Before she could think, she shot to her feet and ran out of the room. Lucas was in the library, sleeves rolled up, reading through some reports. She didn't call his name. She simply threw her arms around him from behind, pressing her cheek into the solid warmth of his back. Lucas froze. Eva? His voice lowered, warm, concerned. She broke. Not the kind of crying that comes from pain, the kind born from being seen, from being protected, from realizing someone had loved her without her knowing. Lucas turned immediately, wrapping his arms around her, strong, secure, as if his embrace were a fortified wall. Eva, what happened? It was you, she choked. You were there. For 3 years. All those opportunities. They were you. Lucas held her tighter, as though wanting to shield every tear she shed. He brushed her cheeks gently, and his gaze, deep, tender, devastating, made her heart ache. "I never wanted you to know," he said. "I wanted you strong for yourself, not because of me." Eva shook her head, tears sliding over her lips. "But I wanted to know. I needed to. I—" Her voice cracked. "No one has ever protected me like that." Lucas closed his eyes for a moment, like someone taming a wildfire inside his chest. When he opened them, his gaze was no longer gentle. It was the look of a man who would tear down the world if it dared harm the woman he loved. He pressed his forehead against hers. "I did it because you're the only thing worth holding on to in this life." Eva sobbed again, but this time from joy. She wrapped her arms around his neck and held on. They stayed like that for a long time. One who had once been abandoned. One who had once lived in shadows. And somehow they had found each other at the exact moment their hearts were ready. A week later, when the world came after the wrong person. New York media flipped overnight. News outlets exposed Noah's lies. His new wife accused him of fabricating his past to build an image. Noah Sterling became the city's punchline. And when weak men fall, they look for someone to blame. That night, the Sterling estate was still. Cold wind swept through the rose garden. Eva was brewing tea in the kitchen when she heard pounding on the back door. A drunken, hateful voice. "Eva, open the door!" She froze. Noah. Before she could call for help, the door slammed open. Noah stumbled inside, reeking of alcohol, eyes blazing with bitterness. "You," he pointed at her, shaking. "Gold-digging witch." Eva stepped back. "Leave, Noah." He advanced, voice cracking into a shout. "My whole life is ruined because of you. You, pretending you're innocent? You?" He shoved her hard against the stone wall. Eva gasped, pain shooting through her spine, fear flooding her veins. For 1 second, she was back in that helpless place. But in the next, Lucas appeared as a storm unleashed. No footsteps, no warning. Just the sound of a fist colliding with flesh. Lucas slammed Noah against the wall so hard the stone shuddered. Noah collapsed, wheezing. Lucas positioned himself in front of Eva, his body a barrier, his breath hot like fire. His voice was low enough to freeze marrow. "You touch my wife again." He grabbed Noah by the collar and lifted him effortlessly. "And I will bury you under this house." Each word was a blade honed in steel. He didn't yell. He didn't lose control. He didn't need to. The danger in his restraint was lethal. Eva trembled, not from fear, but from something that made her chest ache with unbearable clarity. She moved to him, slipping her arms around him from behind, as if touching him alone could erase every shadow. "Lucas!" Her voice quivered. He dropped Noah, turned and pulled her into him instantly. One hand cradled her head, holding her against his chest. His voice softened, though anger still rippled beneath it. "I'm here. You're safe." Eva buried her face in his neck. Her tears soaked his shirt. And in that moment, when he held her like she was the last light in his world, when he stood between her and every darkness she had ever feared, Eva knew. She loved him, not because he saved her, not because he protected her, but because every day, every year, every breath, he chose her. She held him tighter, and her heart whispered a truth she wasn't yet ready to say aloud. "I belong to you." Mornings in the Sterling estate were always bathed in gold. Sunlight slid through the thick garden trees, filtered through the thin curtains, and fell onto the floor in warm, soft ribbons. But today Eva woke with her heart pounding and her fingers trembling around the pregnancy test shaking in her palm. 2 red lines. She stared at them as if blinking might make them disappear. Her whole body trembled, not from fear but from being overwhelmed. She placed a hand on her belly, still flat, yet beneath the skin, a new life, a new beginning. And she cried, not loudly, just soft tears falling onto her nightgown, each drop light but heavy with a lifetime of being abandoned, hurt, dismissed, and finally loved, protected, chosen. She heard footsteps entering the room. Lucas always woke earlier than she did, but today he walked in more softly than usual, as if afraid to wake her. Ava? His voice was deep, warm, like morning coffee. She turned. He saw the test. And the man who had signed billion-dollar deals froze. You! His voice cracked on a single breath. The color drained from his face. His gray eyes widened, trembling with emotions she had never seen on his normally unshakable features. She didn't need to say a word, didn't need to explain, didn't even need to nod. Lucas looked at her face, at the test, at her belly, and he cried. Not streaming tears, not choked sobs, just eyes turning red, lashes wet, his mouth trembling as if that enormous heart of his had cracked open, but in the most beautiful way. He walked to her slowly, like each step could shake the world. He cupped her face, inhaling deeply as if trying to hold the moment still. You're pregnant? His voice was barely there. Eva nodded, her eyes glistening. Lucas pulled her into his chest. He held her as if letting go might break something too fragile to risk. His breath stuttered against her ear. His chest shook. The first time she had ever seen this strong, cold, controlled man tremble from happiness. Thank you, he whispered, voice breaking. Thank you for giving me a family. Something I never thought I'd have. Time moved like a long, beautiful film. Every morning, Lucas always woke first. He placed his hand on Eva's belly gently, like holding a treasure. Good morning, little one, he murmured, his deep voice sending shivers along her skin. It's Dad. She smiled softly, waking to the sound of his devotion. You know, Lucas would say, tracing the curve of her belly with one finger, I still can't believe a part of you and a part of me is growing here. Every time he said it, his eyes glowed like amber through wine, bright and full, nights under warm light. They often stood by the glass wall overlooking the dark garden. Lucas wrapped his arms around her from behind, their foreheads touching, breaths blending. Ava, he whispered, you've turned my life into something I never dared dream of. She placed her hand over his, her eyes shining. And you've done the same for me. He kissed her forehead, longer than necessary, deeper than usual. A kiss full of gratitude. Every appointment. Lucas was always there, always holding her hand, always so tense the nurses couldn't help but smile. When he heard the baby's heartbeat for the first time, Lucas swallowed hard and turned away for a second. Are you okay? She asked. He inhaled shakily. I've never heard anything so beautiful. Eva squeezed his hand, her heart softening. The night labor began. The first pain was a dull ache, then sharper, spreading across her belly in waves of heat. Lucas, the man who controlled everything, fell apart. He didn't leave her side, didn't let anyone else help her into the car, didn't allow the doctor to touch her until he was sure every detail was perfect. I'm okay, Eva gasped. No, you don't understand, Lucas was shaking. I've never been this scared. The car raced through the night. His hand held hers so tightly their palms burned. The delivery room blazed with bright lights, doctors' voices, monitors beeping. Her breath is breaking. Eva hurt. She was exhausted. Tears came with each contraction, sharp and relentless. Lucas stood beside her in scrubs, gripping her hand with the desperation of a man holding on to life. You can do this, he whispered, voice cracking. I'm here, I'm right here. And then a small cry, clear, like a crystal bell hitting water. Eva broke. Lucas nearly collapsed from relief. The doctor placed the baby girl onto Eva's chest, skin to skin, warm as a flower petal, tiny, eyes closed. And from that moment, Eva's life was no longer empty. Lucas reached out with trembling fingers and touched their daughter's head. He inhaled sharply, as if his heart was too full, too painful with love. Lena, he whispered, my little girl. He held her for the first time. The scene was so beautiful that the entire room seemed to blur. A man who had once been colder than any boardroom, holding a newborn with shaking hands. His eyes were wet, his voice breaking. She looks like her mother. He looked at Eva, still on the bed, exhausted but glowing like candlelight. Thank you, Eva, for giving me a real family. Eva reached out her arms. Lucas placed Lena into them and lay down beside her, wrapping both of them in his arms. Under the soft golden lights of the hospital room, the three of them, a man who once believed his heart was frozen, a woman who once believed she was unwanted, and a tiny newborn girl became something greater than love itself. A family, born from fire, healed by their own shared light. 10 years passed like a slow-motion film full of golden light, mornings scented with coffee, and evenings spent holding each other on the balcony overlooking the distant city. The Sterling estate had changed. More of Lena's paintings on the walls. The rose garden is wider and brighter, and laughter, an echo once absent in Lucas's life, now filled the halls every day like a song. Lena raced around the living room, her wavy brown hair, proudly declared just like Mom's, bouncing behind her, her mischievous gray eyes taken straight from Lucas. She was sharp, witty, and always asking questions that made the whole household laugh. Today she wore a plastic crown, a princess cape, and carried Lucas's laser pointer like a scepter. "Mom, I'm a magic CEO." "And who do you manage?" Eva asked. Lena tilted her head, pushing her toy glasses up her nose. "I manage you and Dad. You both have to listen to me. I'm the boss." Lucas pretended to bow solemnly. "Yes, Boss Lena." Eva laughed so hard she doubled over. Lena wrapped her arms around her father's neck, then her mother's, her silver bell laughter spreading across the terrace. In that moment, Eva understood. Her life had been rewritten completely. 10 years after being abandoned, Eva had become a version of herself she'd never dared imagine. She ran a small but highly respected investment fund in the finance community. She was invited to speak at Ivy League universities. Female CEOs called her an inspiration. But what made her proudest was her family. Lucas sat in the front row of every speech she gave. Lena ran to hug her whenever she came home. And her life was no longer a story of survival, but a beautiful one. 10 years of being a father and a husband had changed Lucas in ways only those who loved him could see. He hugged Lena every morning, even when she was still half asleep. And he learned to bake so he could make breakfast for Eva. He shut his computer at 7 p.m. because my wife and daughter matter more than any deal. And he became gentle in ways no one would have ever imagined. Not because he grew weaker, but because he found something worth being gentle for. Love and family. The terrace glowed under warm golden lights, the city stretching ahead like an upside-down sky of stars. A gentle night breeze carried the scent of lavender Eva had planted their first year living together. Eva sat on the long outdoor sofa, wrapped in a light shawl. Lucas stepped out with 2 glasses of red wine, set one in front of her, then sat beside her, his arm sliding around her shoulders. "Tired?" he asked. "A little. The fund had a backlog today." "I figured," he said, brushing a kiss against her temple. "But you were brilliant, as always." Eva leaned her head against his shoulder, smiling softly. After a quiet moment, when all they could hear was the city breathing, Eva whispered, "Lucas, do you regret anything?" He turned toward her. The golden light traced his face, making his gray eyes deeper, softer, more beautiful than the city lights beneath them. He lifted her chin with 2 fingers, his thumb brushing her cheek, a touch that made her heart tremble after more than a decade. "Yes," he said. Eva's heart skipped. He leaned closer, speaking at the edge of a whisper. "I regret waiting 3 years to have you." A shiver ran down her spine. She smiled, a soft, deep smile full of love. "Lucas." He set his wine glass down and pulled her closer, as if he wanted to gather her whole life into his arms. "I could have had you sooner. I could have protected you sooner. I could have made you happy sooner." His lips brushed hers. "That's the only thing I regret." Eva didn't respond with words. She slid her hand up his neck, drew him in, and kissed him, slowly, deeply, like a thank you for 10 years, for every wound that had healed. The wind moved through her hair, the city below blurred. Only the 2 of them remained, just like the day they first found each other. Except this time, everything was warmer, safer, deeper. They kissed under the moonlight, not with the blazing hunger of new lovers, not with recklessness or urgency, but with the steady tenderness of a love that had survived everything. A love that hadn't dimmed. A flame that warmed instead of burned. The rooftop door swung open. "Dad! Mom! I saw a shooting star!" Lena ran toward them, hair flying in the wind, tiny feet tapping against the wooden deck. Eva laughed. Lucas stood and crouched down, arms open. Lena threw herself into both of them, one arm around her mother's neck, legs wrapped around her father's waist. He lifted her high and Eva wrapped her arms around them both, three bodies blending into one warm shape, until the golden lights around the terrace blurred. The imaginary camera pulled back, past the moonlit rooftop, past the sparkling rose garden, past the glowing estate beating like the heart of their family. In the quiet, Lena's laughter echoed, Eva's soft whisper followed, and Lucas pressed a gentle kiss to his wife's hair. And if life were a movie, the narration would say, sometimes being abandoned isn't the end. Sometimes it's how fate pushes us into the arms that were always meant to hold us. The golden lights dimmed, their laughter carried into the night, and their story closed not with a period, but with a promise that this love would never burn out.